Well, it's time to discuss another player that Kyle Dubas could go after when free agency starts on July 1st. No, it's not for a top six role. This time, I think it will be for a bottom six role. That's coming up right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Before we get to our free agent target that I have in mind for today's episode, I do want to take a couple of minutes to discuss Stan Stavran, who passed away on Monday at the age of 76, the godfather of Pittsburgh sports media, an icon to the city of Pittsburgh. When I was a kid, I would always try to tune in to whatever he was on, whether it was radio or television. He did work with the Steelers, did work with the Penguins, did work with the Pirates. Every time I tuned in, again, whether it was radio or television, I got smarter. And he is also a reason why I wanted to pursue a career in journalism. He did everything the right way, was always kind to people, was always gracious to people, treated everyone with the utmost respect. Just listening to his show and seeing people calling on TV or on the radio and just seeing how nice he was to everyone there in person. He was a tremendous human being and, again, was a total icon in this city for the last 40 to 50 years. And look at what everyone is saying on social media right now when it comes to Stan. He was beloved here. You felt like he was just going to work and live forever. I know I personally didn't know him, but in a way, I kind of felt like I did because of the way he engaged with people on his show, the way he talked about Pittsburgh sports. He was a national treasure. And when you think of Pittsburgh sports, one of the first people that comes to mind is Stan Stavran. My thoughts and prayers go out to him, his family, and his loved ones during his time. Stan, there will never be another one like you. Rest easy, fly high, and love the show always. So I just wanted to start out the show with that. Going forward, let's get into a free agent target that I do have in mind for the Penguins. I don't think he's been talked about too much yet from anyone. I don't really think anyone's really been discussing him in the Penguins media sphere or really the fans. And that is Pierre Engvall. Played for the Toronto Maple Leafs this season and also played for the New York Islanders. He was traded to the Islanders a little later on in the season, a move that Dubas could be regretting a little bit because Engvall went on to play very well for the Islanders and helped them get into the playoffs. And only 18 games, had 5 goals and 9 points, finished the season with 17 goals and 30 points in 76 games. This is his second straight season where he has had 15 plus goals and 30 plus points. Before these last couple of seasons, 2020, when he first came in at 8 goals, 15 points. Next season after that had 7 goals, 12 points. But after that, he really broke through, and he is shaping up to get a pretty decent contract in free agency when he hits the market on July 1st. And I think he will be a great addition to the Penguins' bottom six. Kyle Dubas also knows him, was with Engvall for the last 4 years that Dubas was a general manager, could easily see him having interest in him, even though he traded him to the Islanders, a little later on in the season. He's young, only 27, can score for you, can play on the penalty kill. You can even put him on the second power play. Heck, the Islanders are putting him in their top 6 late in the season. I know they're not the deepest team, but if there are some injuries to the Penguins, he can also play in the top 6 if need be. His underlines this year were tremendous. And we'll start with the Leafs right here, and played 58 games, 664 minutes. When he was on the ice, the Leafs had 53% of the shot attempts. They also had about 50% of the actual goals for, 55% of the expected goal share, 53% of the scoring chances, 57% of the high danger chances, and 72% of the high danger goals were 16 for, 6 against. You move on to his time with the Islanders, and his numbers, some of his numbers went up, and some of the other numbers stayed the same. Islanders, 18 games. When he was on the ice, they had 57% of the shot attempts. They also had 65% of the actual goals for, 21 for, 11 against, 55% of the expected goal share, 58% of the scoring chances, 55% of the high danger chances, and 66% of the high danger goals for. Shot 14% in those final 18 games. So there's going to be a little bit of regression that comes with that. He only shot 6.6% when he was with the Maple Leafs, but he had a great season when it comes to the numbers and the counting stats. He is a perfect fit for this team, and I think what they're trying to accomplish in the bottom six. He's a pure left winger. Penguins could use at least one of those for their bottom six. Heck, they could use probably 4 new players for their bottom six. You can even make an argument that they need 6 new players for their bottom six. And again, this will also appease the crowd of them wanting to get younger. I have seen this a lot as of late where people don't want the Penguins to go out and get a bunch of 30-plus-year-old players. I understand that. I had people saying it about Mark Scheifele, though I think Scheifele is a little bit of a different story because he had 40-plus goals this past season. But for someone like Engvall, he's 27. You can probably sign him to a 3 to 4 year term. He made $2.25 million this past season, so he's going to be asking for a raise. You can get him for what? Remember what Brandon Tanev got on the open market, $3.5 million. I think if you can get him for 3 times 3.5, 4 times 3.5, you're fine. I don't think I would give him the Brandon Tanev contract, which was 6 years times 3.5 million, but I would definitely be interested in signing him to play in the bottom six. He has everything the Penguins could be looking for in a player. Again, can score goals, has a great first pass, good skating ability, can forecheck, win battles along the boards, can play on the second power play, can kill penalties. He can do everything that is required from a player in the bottom six, and he would fit Mike Sullivan's system to a T. Kyle Dubas, very familiar with him, even though he traded him. I really, and I mean really, like this player. It took him a little bit to get going. First couple of seasons in the NHL weren't really much to write home about, but these last couple of seasons have been very good for Engvall. So I would be very intrigued about signing him if I were Kyle Dubas. Again, wouldn't like the term 3 to 4 years. I think is good. If you can get him for 3.5, maybe 3.6 million per season, it's probably fair. But he is exactly the type of player that the Penguins should be acquiring for their bottom six. A speed first player, someone who can put the puck in the back of the net, someone who can also take the pressure off of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and all those top guys when they're having an off game or two. Because so many times this past season, right, Penguins just never got enough depth scoring when Crosby, Malkin, Raquel, Gensel were just taking some time off, and that killed them. Remember when this team was so deep, especially during the Jim Rutherford era, toward the end of the Jim Rutherford era, even during the start of the Ron Hextall era until Hextall really just butchered it? They got away from that over this last year and a half. It's time to get back to being a 4-line team and having players who can help take the pressure off the big guns so they don't have to carry the team on a nightly basis. He is definitely one to monitor. I'm not really crazy about this free agency class as a whole, and I understand he got top 6 minutes with the Islanders this past season, but on the Penguins, he would be playing, I think, on the 3rd line, and he will be someone who can contribute, definitely on a weekly basis. I don't know if he'll be on a nightly basis because he's not going to score every game, but I think definitely on like a weekly basis. I am very interested in bringing this player aboard. Has the stats, has the underlines, passes the eye test. Total Mike Sullivan type player, and also a player that Dubas should go after on the free agent market. So that wraps up this first segment. Let me know what you all think down in the comments. You can also send me a DM on social media. Do you think Pierre Engvall would make sense for the Penguins on free agent frenzy, which is July 1st? Can we think about it right now? We're about 18 days away, so almost 2.5 weeks. It's coming up really quick. Very, very quickly. So let's see if Dubas goes after him once that starts. And I do think he's going to have a lot of interest. The Islanders, I think, will be trying to re-sign him, though I think they're also trying to re-sign Scott Mayfield. He's going to look for a lot of term. Other teams in the East and the West will be going after Engvall after the season that he just had. But that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second, we're going to get into Mark Friedman's season review, what I thought from him this season, and what I expect from him heading into next season. But before we discuss that, we have to jump into eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, you can head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage, and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you will get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's very easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. That's right. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at NLR Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So continuing with our season reviews is one of the final extras that I have to do on defense before we get to some of the extra forwards. Is Mark Friedman started the season in the AHL, was called up numerous times, ended up playing a grand total of 23 games. So the Penguins this season, 1 goal, 3 points in those 23 games. His offensive numbers have really nothing been, that much, to write home about. In 65 career games, 4 goals, 12 points in those games. He's played sparingly throughout his time as a Penguin, but he's still also a very good number 7 or number 8 defenseman to have. You can do a lot worse when it comes to Mark Friedman, a.k.a. Lord Farquaad, as Brian Boyle from last season, a couple other Penguins players had the shirt of him. And I would love to find that shirt. If whoever makes that whoever made that shirt wants to make more, please do it, because I will buy that one in a heartbeat. I thought it was a hilarious shirt when Brian Boyle and a couple of the other players were wearing. I think Jason Zucker was also wearing it during a media availability as well. The underlyings, though, Friedman this year played 301 minutes at even strength when he was on the ice. The Penguins had 53% of the shot attempts. They also had 54% of the actual goals for, 57% of the expected goal share. His expected goal share total has always been very high, especially for the last 3 seasons that he's been in Pittsburgh. 58% in 2021. Last year, 55.3, then this year, 57.4. Also, 161 scoring chances for, 134 scoring chances against for 54.5%. 67 high danger chances for, 55 high danger chances against for 54.9%. We'll round up to 55. And then 9 high danger goals for when he was on the ice, 4 high danger goals against, shot 6.86% on the ice. So his underlyings have always been super strong for as long as he's been a Penguin. There's a reason why he was called the expected goals god when he was on the ice. If you go to Micah Blake McCurdy's charts for Hockey Viz, there's a whole blob of red right around the center of the offensive zone, and it just shows where he drives, and that just shows where he drives offense. And it's been like that his entire Penguins tenure. It was like it a lot bigger when he first came over in that very short sample size. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still very much there. And again, I really like him as a number 7 or a number 8 defenseman in this system. He can come up anytime. He can give you quality minutes on the bottom pairing. Heck, he can even play for you on the second pairing at times. He's always defensively responsible in his own zone, has a booming shot from the point. He can also, if you need be, quarterback the second power play, though. If he's quarterbacking the second power play, that means your defense is pretty banged up. I've always been a fan of him. He also brings that added physical presence that I know a lot of people in this fan base like. I know some people think this team is a bit soft. They don't really go after the body a lot. I personally think some of the physicality talk is a little overrated, but I do like seeing him throw a pretty nice hit once in a while. And oh yeah, he'll get in your face as well. He's a hilarious troll. He reminds me of a couple of my buddies who just love getting people riled up. That is Mark Friedman. He lives on getting people #mad online. Just, go back to that game against the Rangers. That was when actually Shesterkin did that hand motion saying like, oh yeah, keep talking. He was doing that to Mark Friedman because Friedman was just barking at him when the Penguins were going off the ice after they lost, was it 4-0 late last season in 2022, not this past season. And he was doing it all throughout that series against the Rangers. He was doing it in the games this past season. He is a ton of fun when he is on the ice. And for the minutes that he provided the Penguins this season, I thought he was totally fine. He is a perfect number 7 or number 8 guy in your system. If the Penguins go out and make some changes to their defense this offseason, right? And say, you move on from Jeff Petrie, somehow you bring in someone else on the right side, you bring in a top 4 guy for your left side, you move out Jan Ruda, Chad Riedel steps in, and you have a top 6 of whoever's playing with Crystal Tang. You got Marcus Pettersson and whoever with the new guy, and then you got P.O. Joseph and Chad Riedel. After that, I would say your number 7 defenseman, should be Mark Friedman. He deserves to be on this team full time. And it was unfortunate that he was down in the AHL for most of the season. I do not think he belongs in the AHL anymore. He belongs in the big leagues. And I know it probably was hard for him to be sent down to the minors right after training camp ended. He was one of the final roster moves that the Penguins had to do because they were barely under the cap. Heck, they had to put on waivers multiple times this season. And honestly, my friends, I thought he was going to get claimed both times. I was kind of surprised that he was not claimed by any team, considering the underlines that he's put up in a very limited role with the Penguins and just some of the numbers overall, and also his eye test. I would have thought at least one general manager would take a flyer on him. So the Penguins, I think, got super, and I mean super lucky that he was not taken by another team. But they'll continue to have him play in the system. I really enjoyed Mark Friedman, and I do hope that he is on the big team next season, because again, I really do not think that he belongs in the minor leagues. It was really unfortunate to see that whole situation pan out, because heck, remember the Penguins wanted to have, I think, him and Ty Smith up to start the season, but because Ron Hextall bungled the salary cap so badly, they had to send both of them down to Wilkes. But of course, they had to waive one of them, and it was just, it was an absolute tire fire. So, really appreciated Friedman for this past season and the games that he played, and I'll give him a solid B for my grade. But that will do it for this segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up to end the show, we're going to get into if the Stanley Cup will be rewarded on Tuesday night. I'm going to give my prediction for that coming up right after this. And we are back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at Elmhurst Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen / watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So tonight, we could see the NHL season come to an end as the Vegas Golden Knights are 1 win away from their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. They beat the Florida Panthers in Game 4 on Saturday night after the Panthers really tried to come back in that game. They were down 3-0. Brandon Montour makes it 3-1. Sasha Barkov makes it 3-2, but they weren't able to complete the comeback. And coming back from 3-1 down, it's hard to do once. It's almost impossible to do twice. I'm not going to bet against the Panthers because I've been doing that all playoffs long, only to look like a complete fool. I picked the Knights in 7, but right now, it's hard to see Vegas losing this at home with everyone there. That is going to be a madhouse at the Strip tonight. And I just love the way the Golden Knights are humming right now. Adin Hill's playing out of his mind. Mark Stone is playing great. Jonathan Marchessault is having a lot of fun these playoffs, really sticking it to his former team here, showing why Dale Talon was a complete moron to give him up to Vegas, him and Riley Smith. It also doesn't help for the Panthers that Bobrovsky hasn't been as good in these 4 games, and especially Matthew Tkachuk being hurt. He's barely been able to raise his arm up to shoulder length. He's obviously very banged up, did not even practice on Monday. Status, it's unknown for Tuesday, but I gotta think he's going to play tonight. Biggest game of your season. I know he's battling a big injury, but he's going to go out there and gut it out, even though he didn't play as much in the third period over the weekend. I gotta think he's going to go out there and fully gut it out. But, Vegas right now, their top players are playing awesome. Their defensemen have been great. Adin Hill is showing why he's probably going to get quite a big payday once this season is over. But Vegas, they are just a ton of fun to watch. The Panthers haven't really gotten anything going offensively in this series. Even when Tkachuk has been on the ice, he obviously had the big goal to tie it in Game 3. Verhaeghe won the game where he felt like, maybe they're going to win Game 4. But honestly, this series has been kind of playing out like the 2016 Stanley Cup Final between the Penguins and the Sharks, where the Golden Knights were the much better team in the first 2 games, much like the Penguins were against the Sharks. Penguins, I thought, were the better team in Game 3, like the Knights. But the Knights lost that game in overtime after a late goal. Same thing with the Penguins against the Sharks. Jonas Don scoring Game 3. Then both teams were able to win on the road in Game 4. And now they're coming back to Game 5. I know the Penguins lost Game 5 at home, and that was a madhouse outside of PPG Paints Arena. There was a huge square to watch the game. There was Market Square. Another TV had to be set up. Vegas is going to be insane. I don't know if it's going to go the way it did in Pittsburgh, where Penguins had to go back to San Jose to win the Cup. Obviously, no one in Vegas wants to travel back to Florida, try to win the Cup there. But right now, I'm seeing a lot of similarities when it comes to this Stanley Cup Final and the one in 2016 when it comes to the Penguins and the Sharks. I do think Vegas is going to take it on Tuesday. I originally said Vegas in 7. So I'm going to move on my prediction a little bit. I'm loving the way they're playing. Their depth has been too much. Honestly, every part of their game has been too much for the Panthers to handle. And with Tkachuk hurt, I just don't know how much damage the Panthers can truly do to the Knights. So I think the Stanley Cup is going to be won tonight. The season will end. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll go back to Sunrise later on this week. And if I'm wrong there, we'll go back to Vegas later on after that. But right now, I am thinking that the Knights are going to take this home on Tuesday. Really looking forward to watching it. It's been a fun playoff run so far for these last couple of months. I don't want to see it end, but I do think we are trending that way right now. But I believe that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I do want to say, I want to make a slight correction to a thing I had in my Monday episode when I was talking about Brian Rust and how the Penguins had trade assets to get players coming in via trade. I said that he had a 15-team no-trade list. That is my fault. I was thinking of Jeff Petrie when I said that Brian Rust has a full no-move clause for this upcoming season. You would have to go to him to ask him to waive it to any team who you're trading with if you want to move on from him in a trade. Petrie's the one that has the 15-team no-trade list, but Brian Rust has the full move clause. That is in his contract after Ron Hextall gave it to him last year. But just want to correct a little thing I had on that because, I always strive to be 100% accurate for you all. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Really appreciate all of you listening / watching. We'll be back with another episode on Wednesday. We'll continue looking at some more free agents, some more trade stuff. I will have some draft stuff coming likely next week. I'm going to drop my big board. Also going to look at some other big boards from big-time scouts and other people surrounding the NHL draft to see who the Penguins should take in the first round of the NHL draft if they do keep their picks. So a lot of draft content is coming. Again, I'm going to drop my big board coming up next week. So again, thank you all so much for listening and watching. Really appreciate it. I'll be back with another episode for you all on Wednesday.